Big news. According to an investigative report from the Washington Examiner, in the summer of 2021, a cadre of leftist non-government organizations colluded with top Biden administration officials to implement President Biden's recent executive order that granted such organizations recruitment tools when it comes to voting. Now, these NGOs, as they're called, non-government organizations, these NGOs include groups such as the disgraced Southern Poverty Law Center. They coordinated with the highest levels of the Biden administration to initiate a partisan get out the vote effort. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Gabe Kaminsky. He's the investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner who reported on all this. Gabe, welcome to Washington Watch. It's an honor to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thanks.
All right, well, so let's start with this executive order that was issued by President Biden. What did it do?
Yeah, President Joe Biden in 2021 signed an executive order, a sweeping, unprecedented voter registration related order, voter mobilization executive order, authorizing agencies to prioritize registering voters directly and also to work with quote unquote approved nonprofit organizations on a nonpartisan basis under federal law to register voters across the country. Now, what we had uncovered at the Washington Examiner is that the Biden administration, the White House, and the Department of Justice, and other top agencies actually held a meeting after this executive order was signed in the summer of 2021 with a whole cadre, as you mentioned, of organizations to discuss voter registration and how something like that would look in the future. What we uncovered and what is apparent through those documents is that the organizations involved in planning and coordinating on this executive order all share one thing in common. They all are left-leaning. Some of them are more progressive, in fact. And that's something that conservative groups like the Heritage Foundation or the Foundation for Government Accountability, these influential conservative think tanks, they're concerned about. That's something that they worry about ahead of the 2024 election, that potentially there could be a partisan operation to essentially work through the federal agencies, through taxpayer dollars, to get voters to vote for President Joe Biden and Democrats.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And they claim this is nonpartisan. It is partisan through and through, not even nothing but left-leaning and leftist organizations like the SPLC, for example, Southern Poverty Law Center. How did they come into all of this?
The SPLC is one of these organizations that was involved in this since reported meeting that took place at the White House, along with groups like the George Soros-funded Open Society Policy Center, Black Voters Matter, a group that was very active in 2022, getting Democrats elected in Georgia. As I mentioned, SPLC, a whole Campaign Legal Center, a left-wing watchdog group. And so the concern from right-of-center groups, right, is, you want your government to act in a nonpartisan fashion. There's a concern among people, conservatives particularly, that this is going to be used, this sort of operation, to register Democrats across the country or register voters in places where Democrats people would be more likely to vote for the Democratic Party.
So what about the Hatch Act? I mean, there's got to be people out there asking about that. This, of course, prohibits federal employees in the executive branch from engaging in all sorts of forms of political activity. Are these nonprofits somehow trying to run interference just for the appearance sake to maybe look like the Hatch Act is not being violated?
I think that is a concern of members of Congress, that this could violate the Hatch Act, which prohibits certain political activities for the for federal officials. Now, the other thing I would point to is the Anti-Deficiency Act. That's an act that prohibits federal agencies from acting in ways external to congressional appropriations. In other words, there's concern from lawmakers that taxpayer dollars are being used in a way that they are not already authorized. That's something that Hans von Spakovsky had mentioned to me at the Heritage Foundation. And that's something a lot of people are concerned about. And so there's certain laws that I think could become, more relevant, certainly as lawmakers look into this, and as potentially courts, take up certain cases.
Well, it looks to me like the Biden administration somehow is just banking on the legacy media to just ignore all the violations and to not raise a fuss about it at all in hopes that it'll all go away. Well, I just want to personally say, Gabe Kaminsky, thank you for the incredible investigative reporting that you've done on this there at the Washington Examiner. Great job. And thank you for taking time to join us here on Washington Watch.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.